Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everybody. Today we're gonna see in more detail about advertising and public relations, a chapter we had been doing before. This lecture is a continuation of that lecture. But before we head on to today's topics, let's quickly recap what we did in the previous lecture. Now, talking about advertising, we started off with the definition of advertising. Advertising is any paid form of non-personal presentation and promotion of ideas, goods or services by an identified sponsor. We dissected the definition, and we said that the few important things in the definition. The first being non-personal presentation, where a representative of the company is not present when you view the ad. Another important aspect when it comes to the definition of advertising is that it is by an identified sponsor. So you can clearly identify who the message is who's sending out the message. And the promotion is usually related to a product. It may be related to a person. For instance, during election campaigns, you see a lot of advertisements regarding the nominees who are running for a particular post, right? So for instance, you could see advertisements running for Prime Minister, for Chairman Senate, or so on and so forth. So these are all posts that are there, and organizations advertise to fill out these posts. So this is all advertising. Right. Now, advertising is a whole process, and there are different major decisions that you need to take when you're advertising for a particular product in question, right? So the first decision that you need to take, or first important thing that you need to consider, is that you need to set the advertising objective. Now, we started advertising objective. It is a specific task that you want to accomplish, which is related to a specific target audience, and it needs to be accomplished within a specific time frame. So what communication objective you're trying to attain from your communication is your advertising objective, right? So advertising objective, we classify the advertising objectives in three categories. The first category was to inform the people, the second category was to persuade the people, and the third category was to remind the people. Then we talked about informative advertising, and we talked about primary demand. So what was primary demand? Primary demand was creating demand of a certain category of product rather than a particular brand, right? So a category of brand would be milk, right? And what would be the brands within that category? The brand could be Nopur, the brand could be Milk Pack, the brand could be Good Milk. So these are all different brands. Another example could be sodas. So the category is sodas, and the soda could be Coke, the soda could be Pepsi, the soda could be Gourmet Cola, for instance. So this is all primary demand. So whenever you try to inform people and you try to create primary demand for a product, that falls under the first objective of advertising, that is informative advertising. And it is usually for new product categories. So since people are not aware of the product category in itself, therefore you try to create its primary demand, and once the primary demand has been created, then you can later move on to creating secondary demand, which is essentially creating demands for a particular brand rather than a product category. I'm talking about the second advertising objective, which is persuasive advertising. Persuasive advertising is important with increased competition to build selective demand. So it is actually secondary demand creation, whereby you want to create demand for a particular brand. So people know that milk consumption is important. They want to buy milk. What different options you have, right? So you try to persuade an average consumer into buying your product, and that is the second objective of advertising, where you publicize or you promote a certain brand rather than a product category. Right? Product category would be advertised in itself, but most importantly you would try to tell people that this brand is superior over its competitors. One important thing that falls under, or one important category of advertising that falls under persuasive advertising, is called the comparative advertising. Now in comparative advertising, many countries consider it legal, and it is very common to view comparative advertising in their on their television networks. But countries like India and countries like China, I believe it's China, the comparative advertising is not that common, right? So, and in fact there are certain laws that govern comparative advertising that sort of prohibit the use of comparative advertising in marketing, right? So comparative advertising, what it is directly or indirectly comparing your brand with that of your competitors, trying to tell people that the certain brand stands out. We saw the example of Pepsi and Coke in the last lecture, and how a salesperson of Coke wanted Pepsi and not Coke. So this was comparative advertising, whereby Pepsi explicitly showed in their advertisement that Pepsi is superior to Coke. The brand of Coke was very visible, their logo was very visible, and they talked about it, right? So this was comparative advertising. Then reminder advertising is important with mature products to help maintain customer relationship with customer thinking about the product. So we said that you have PLC, that is product life cycle, and a product goes through different stages within a product life cycle. When your product reaches maturity level, then it has gained the number of sales it possibly could, right? So its sales are not going to increase anymore under the present circumstances, right? So that is the maturity level for a particular product. The sales have leveled off, right? So what do you do? What sort of advertising would you do in that scenario? The type of advertising you would look into would be reminder advertisements. Now reminder advertisements are advertisements that are sent out to consumers just to make sure that the product remains in the minds of the customer whenever they go out, right? So then you're not trying to, tell customer your product is superior than the other, or you're trying to inform them about a certain product, or you're trying to educate the people about the product. What you're trying to do is just leaving out a message that we're still in the market and that we are a good choice, right? So that's the simple, very basic way of reminder advertisement. They build relationships with the people. They try to communicate to the people that we're there, right? So Coca-Cola advertisements, Pepsi advertisements, they're very good examples of reminder advertising. And factors to consider when setting advertising budget. We've talked about advertising budget and how a company could allocate their advertising budget. We distinctly identified 4 different ways through which you could set the budget. There was affordable method, there was sales by percentage method, then there were objective and task method, and then you could see your competitors' outlay, and then you could set your budget according to competitors. That was the competitor parity method. So there are 4 ways through which you could allocate your budget depending upon your product type, depending upon the nature of your company, how big the company is. You could choose any of the methods. But for what factors would affect your budget? There are 2 factors, main factors that would affect your budget. The first one is product life cycle stage, and the second one is called the market share. Let's talk about product life cycle stage. Now product life cycle stage when products are newly introduced into the market, right, the introduction phase and the growth phase, that is when the product is relatively new into the market. Now at that particular stage, what you're trying to do is you're trying to initiate trial, and secondly you're trying to make people aware of the product. Now this costs a lot of money, and for that you need to promote your product. You need to inject money in your promotional campaigns so that you could convince the people into trying your product, you could educate the people about your product, right? So for instance, the latest ad, Nestle ad about hydration, the new level of hydration with pH alkalinate, something like that, the advertisement that is currently running on television, it's a sort of innovation in their product, and as a result of which they're running the advertisement over and over again, so as to educate people that this is new that we are offering and that they should try it and test it for themselves, right? So this is when you need larger budgets for your advertising, when your product category is or when your product is new into the market. If your product is mature, on the other hand, as we said, the sales have leveled off, they would not increase any further, so you do not need to promote as much as you needed prior to your product reaching the maturity stage. So what you do in this particular stage of PLC, you send out reminder advertisement that we just talked about. So for reminder advertisement, they're generally advertisements that are not of that are not very long, and they cost you slightly lesser than those which are designed to educate people, because education, the ads that educate, they generally tend to be lengthy, and whenever an advertisement is lengthy, that means it would cost you more money, right? So reminder advertisements are generally of short duration and are not that frequently sent out on television and other mediums, right? So they're sent out on and off, so it requires less budget. So as a result of which, mature brands require lower budgets. Then we talked about market share. Building or taking market share requires larger budgets, right? So a company who has already convinced people that their product is superior, people have tried the product, they like the product, and they stay loyal with the company. For a new company to come in and take that particular market share away from an existing player of the market, it requires a lot of effort on part of the new company and a lot of money as well. So maybe you need to give out free samples to the people. Maybe you need to do more advertising on television and any other media that your target market uses. But you need to be on your toes all the time so as to make sure that people become aware of your product and they at least give it a try. Once they try it, they'll know for themselves if the product is better than that offered by the competitor or the product that they're currently using, which one's better, right? So initiating trial is extremely important, and that requires a large amount of budget from the company. The markets with heavy competition or high advertising clutter require larger budgets, right? So as evident, if there's a lot of competition in the market, you need to allocate a significant budget so as to deal with the competition that is there. So you need to keep in mind your competitor outlays, and then you need to make sure that you allocate the budget accordingly. Otherwise, you'll lose your market share to your competitor because of the heavy promotions that the advertiser is doing. For instance, you're selling out biscuits and your competitor is giving away a free lunchbox with a pack of biscuits. So when the kids go, they would want to have that lunchbox or maybe a toy that is being given out, right? So you would lose your share to the competitor. Why do most of the young children like to go for McDonald's Happy Meal rather than the other kids meal available in the market? For the simple reason that the quality of the toy and the toy itself is very engaging, right? So they want to go to McDonald's just to get the toy, and that increases the sales of the of McDonald's. So a child would always be accompanied by an elder, and he might, get his meal from McDonald's as well. So as a result of which, they make significant profits. Then undifferentiated brands require larger budgets. I believe we missed out on this point in the last lecture. The undifferentiated brands are the brands that are easily replaceable, right? Whose substitutes are readily available, right? So if I go out from university today, I find that a petrol pump is closed. Let's say a PSO petrol pump is closed here. I'll go to the very next petrol pump that may be of Total, that may be of Caltex, and I go there and get my car refueled and go, right? So the products were easily replaceable. If PSO wasn't available, I took the other petrol station and filled up my car. So the products were easily substituted. Now these are undifferentiated brands, and to create loyalty among undifferentiated brands, it's extremely difficult, right? So go out to get yourselves groceries and you buy masalas for your kitchen closet. If National is not available, you'll buy Shan. If Shan is not available, you'll buy Mehran. So these are undifferentiated brands, and for these brands you need a lot of advertising so as to convince the people that Shan is not replaceable by National, or National is not replaceable by Mehran, right? Now once you've allocated the budget, then you develop the advertising strategy. Advertising strategy is a strategy by which the company accomplishes its advertising objectives, and consists of creating advertising messages and selecting advertising media. So two important things fall under advertising strategy, the first being advertising messages and the second one being advertising media. We talked about breaking through the clutter. We talked about how people have shorter attention spans these days. In one of the previous lectures, we talked about how an average consumer attention span has reduced from I believe it was 12 seconds to 8 seconds, which is actually less than that of a goldfish, right? So attention span, an average consumer's attention span is nowadays lower than that of a goldfish. So in order to capture the attention of the people, you need to create advertisements that are entertaining for them, that are engaging, that are imaginative, and that are rewarding, right? So people have a lot of options. They could switch the channel immediately if they don't like your advertisement. So you need to create an advertisement that sends out the information that you want to, at the very same time it is entertaining, and that's what we talked about in medicine and wine. That is the intersection of Madison Avenue and Wine Avenue. Madison Avenue from the a street in New York, which has all the big names of advertising agencies, and the Wine Avenue from the Hollywood. Right, so creating the advertising message. Now, creating advertising message starts with message strategy, which gives input to creative concept and message execution. Now, message strategy is the general message that will be communicated to consumers. So it would it would tell the benefits that the message wants to disseminate or wants to communicate to the target audience, alongside the positioning of the product. So it would sort of set the scope for the message and for the art director and the copywriter to work on, right? So whatever they work on, the benefits outlined by the message strategy and the positioning outlined by the message strategy needs to be kept in mind. So it is sort of, message strategy sort of builds the boundary around in which the copywriter and the art director and the production department would work in. Now, what's a creative concept? Creative concept is the idea that will bring the message strategy to life and guide specific appeals to be used in the advertising campaign. We've talked about advertising appeals. We've talked about how humorous appeals, rational appeals. These are the same appeals here. And then you need to the characteristics of the appeals include they need to be meaningful, they need to be believable, and they need to be distinctive. Now what is a meaningful appeal? A meaningful appeal is an appeal that makes sense or that is relevant to the audience or to the target audience. The believable means the people need to be, should be able to believe it, and the last one is distinctive. It needs to be distinct from whatever the competitor is saying. So your appeal needs to be differentiated from the competitor's appeal. Now it is coming down to message execution. Execution is where the idea, the creative concept that you've created will be turned into an actual advertisement, right? A creative team must find the best approach for style, tone, words, format for executing the message. So these are important elements when it comes to message execution. That is style, tone, words, and format. And these are a few execution styles that we did: slice of life, musical, personality, symbol, right? So slice of life was whereby people were using the product in ordinary settings, and there was lifestyle, how product fits into a certain lifestyle. Fantasy, personality, symbol. So these were few execution styles. So this was all about yesterday's lecture. Let's quickly, this was a quick recap of what we did in the previous class. Now let's get to the message execution part of, message creation or message strategy, right? So how do you execute the message? We have, done a few execution styles. Now the things that are important when it comes to message execution is the first one being the tone of the message. How would the message tone be? Would it be positive? Would it be negative? Would it be humorous? So there are gazillion ways in which you could set the tone of your message. But broadly classifying positive and negative is a very broad classification of message tone. So if you see the advertisements like Procter & Gamble, Unilever, L'Oreal, these are all generally positively toned message. L'Oreal says because you're worth it. So Aishwarya comes on television, she tells you about all the benefits of total repair, and then at the end she tells you because you're worth it. Positively toned, right? On the other hand, you have negatively toned messages, right? This is a message that is sent out by the government. If you're involved in, electricity theft, then these are, this is how the government would take down all those thieves, right? Again, FBI messages are nowadays coming on television whereby they're sort of telling people that if you do not file taxes on time, this could happen to you. So this is again negatively toned message. Then you have humorous appeals. Youphone, we've been talking about it over and over again during the semester, how humorous appeals have been employed by Youphone in their advertisements, and they're sort of pioneers in that when it comes to Pakistan. Then the second element when it comes to message execution alongside tone is the words. The word choice is extremely important when you're designing a message. Words say a lot about you as an individual as well. So the way you talk tells your upbringing, about your family background, the social class that you move into. So this is the word choice is extremely important in our everyday life. And since word choice is so important, it is important to advertisers as well. For instance, a very good example written on board is WWF. Now WWF is an organization that works on conserving nature, right? So what they could how could they directly say to the people that we need money and we need to protect the environment? So they could directly tell you that give us money and we'll protect the environment, or we'll conserve the environment. That is a very direct way of telling people that this is what we do and this is how you could help us. But this is not how they communicate to people, because choice of words is extremely important. So how do they tell people to sort of donate and contribute towards conserving nature? So they say, we share sky, we share the future, together we can be a force of nature. So beautiful selection of words when it comes to telling people that we need to work together in order to conserve the nature. Right? So this is choice of words, which is extremely important when it comes to designing your advertisement. Then another important element when it comes to message execution is format of the message. Right? So format essentially includes three things. The first thing is illustrations, the pictures that would go into the message, right? How vivid the pictures would be, what pictures would go into the message, what colors would the pictures have. You know, that communicates a lot. The science of color is you know, extremely important for marketers. Another important thing when it comes to format is headlines. What headline would the message have, right? Because headline is the first thing. With the illustration, the headline is the first thing that you read, right? That catches your attention first. So it needs to be very engaging. So you need to create a headline that is, you know, that is not offensive to anybody and that engages the customer and makes him read the rest of the advertisements. So again, headline is extremely important. And then lastly, copy. The copy needs to be enticing. It needs to engage the customer. The copy is the text that goes into the advertisement, right? So it needs to be engaging for the customer. It needs to provide all the relevant information that the company wants to send out or the, you know, the customer might want in an advertisement. So these three things are extremely important when it comes to message execution. Actually, four things. The first one was style, and the style was slice of life and all those 8-9 things that we studied. Alongside style, tone, positive, negative, humorous, depending upon the type of product that you're selling out and the type of strategy that you're following. Then choice of words, extremely important. And then lastly, the format, which includes the illustration, headline, and the copy. Now, since we are talking about creating advertising message, it is extremely important to talk about a new phenomena that is taking place, and that is consumer-generated messages, whereby the consumer are creating the advertising content. A very good example is that of YouTube videos. There are thousands and thousands of videos on the internet, or specifically on YouTube, which is one of the most popular websites when it comes to you know, people sharing their video content. So YouTube is an excellent medium whereby an average person creates data that could, you know, serve as an advertisement for the company. For instance, one of the most popular videos ever created on YouTube was that of Mentos and Diet Coke. This was an experiment that an amateur video maker did, and what he did was he put a piece or you know, a Mentos in a glass of Diet Coke, and you know, and he recorded, you know, the reaction that took place, and he put it up on YouTube, and you know, it got many views. Not just views for that amateur video maker, but it also resulted in you know, advertising and promoting Diet Coke, because Diet Coke and Mentos at the very same time as well. So both the products were advertised indirectly by that amateur YouTuber. So excellent medium when it comes to consumer generated messages. Then you could the companies also create contests, and in those contests they engage the customer into creating messages into sending out messages. Again, a very useful way of advertising. A good example shown here on your screen is that of Uphone logo. Now initially when Uphone came in, it came in with this particular logo. Okay. So in this, the blue logo is the old logo of Uphone. When it came in with this logo, and then it initiated a contest. And that contest, an average consumer had to design the logo for Uphone. Right? So they said that an average consumer would design the logo, and there was a competition held, and the one whose logo gets selected would be given a cash prize. Right? And as a result of which, they were able to come up with their new logo. Now what it did was, it engaged the customer. The customer studied about Uphone. They got to know about Uphone. People created different logos. They sent the logo. They put in an effort into going on board, drawing a logo, sending it out to the company in hope of winning the contest. Right? So it engaged the customer. And the people who did not even participate, they were engaged as well, so as to see what would be the result of the competition, right? So both participants and non-participants were engaged into in this contest, and as a result of which consumer involvement was significantly increased for a new company. So this was an excellent way of engaging customer. Again, the positives of consumer-generated messages: it is less expensive since you're not creating the message yourself. How much would an amateur video maker, video would cost you, right? Probably zero, right? So it is less expensive. Then you come up with creative ideas. When you're working in a certain company and it works for, let's say, with a certain advertising agency, that advertising agency has its own way of communicating with the people, right? So once it communicates the way it communicates, then you sort of restrict it, right? So for instance, when Uphone was advertising with the company, it was, I believe it was Interflow, I'm not too sure though. So when they were advertising with that, using that particular advertising agency, when they were creating advertisements for Uphone, all the advertisement looked pretty much similar, the same humorous appeal in all their advertisements. What happened was, people were never shocked to see any new advertisement, because this is what they expected out of a Uphone advertisement, that it would be humorous. So every time a new advertisement used to come in, it did not sort of engage the customer because of the predictability of the ad. So people could exactly predict what would happen in the advertisements, right? So when you're working with the same company, with the same advertising agency, with the same advertising group, your view seems to be the same. But when you ask consumer to generate messages for you, every consumer has its own thinking process, as a result of which they see the brand differently. And in that different view, they create the content, as a result of which you have a range of content that is developed. So one advertiser or one YouTuber might make a very humorous video about a certain brand, the other might make a very rational video about a certain brand, the third advertiser may take a very different approach from the other two, right? So in this way you have range of messages that are developed because of the difference in which they see the brand, right? So this is new creative ideas that come up. Then fresh perspective on brand. Again, every person has their own perspective about the brand, and when you study different consumers, you realize what is their perspective, and not just and not just that, the fact that you learn about their perspective about your brand, but it also boosts their involvement into your brand, right? So that is another benefit of consumer generated messages. So it is low in expense, it costs you far less money. So an average advertisement, let's say in US, costs around $5 lakh to create, right? An average message. But a YouTube video costs you around $10. So marked difference in the cost of advertising when it comes to consumer generated messages. New creative ideas, since every person has a different take on looking at your company, in looking at the product and, you know, execution style, again, you come up with very creative campaigns. The third, you realize people view your brand differently, and resultantly they create messages differently. And then the consumer involvement increases, as we saw in the previous example about Ufone and how they created a contest, and that increased the consumer involvement, and they came up with a new logo. Now, major steps when it comes to you know, selecting advertising media is deciding on the reach, frequency, and impact, right? So these are the major steps that are involved in selecting media, advertising media. The first is deciding on the reach, frequency, and impact. The second one being selecting media vehicles, and the third one being deciding on media timing. Let's get to the first one, deciding on reach, frequency, and impact. So what is reach? The reach of the advertisement. Reach is a measure of the percentage of people in the target market who are exposed to ad campaign during a given period of time. So how many people would be exposed to your advertisement is reach, right? So let's say there are 100 users or 100 prospective customers of your product in a market. Your target would be, let's say, to reach 80 people. So 80% is the reach set for a particular advertisement. You want to see 80% of your target market to view your advertisement, and that would be the reach of your advertisement. Frequency, on the other hand, would be how many number of times would that people that you would reach out to would see your advertisement. Once, twice, thrice, 10 times, depends upon your advertising campaign. But it is generally advised that to create a response, you need to at least advertise, an average prospective customer needs to be advertised at least thrice, right? So frequency is number of times a person would view your ad. So a more formal definition would be frequency is a measure of how many times the average person in the target market is exposed to the message. The third important element in this is impact. Impact is the qualitative value of the message exposure through a given media. So if we reach the audience, they have seen the ad, let's say 10 times, what impact would it create once they've watched the advertisement? That is an important element when it comes to selecting advertising media, right? So why do companies want to advertise in programs that have high TRP ratings? They want to advertise in programs that have high TRP ratings because the number of people that view the advertisements in that the number of people who view the program are generally higher, and as a result of which your frequency, your reach increases. And once your reach increases, as a result of which the chances are that your impact might be higher. Not always, but might be higher. So that is reach, frequency, and impact. And you know, TRP ratings is a good way to gauge sort of media engagement. How many people get engaged into a program, that is TRP ratings. So at the end of the day, you just don't want to reach out to the people, you want to engage the people as well. So if you send out message and if it reaches the customer but it fails to sort of engage the customer, it's of no use, it's of no value, because at the end of the day you would not be able to translate it into a sale. And if you cannot translate a promotion into a sale, that means it wouldn't be of much benefit to the company. Then selecting media vehicles, that is also extremely important. Involves decision presenting the media effectively and efficiently to the target customer, and must consider the message impact, effectiveness and cost. So there are different media mediums that one can use to send out a message. There could be television, there could be radio, there could be magazines, newspapers. So these are different mediums through which you could send out the message. But once you're sending out the message, you need to ensure that you take into account the impact that you want to create with that particular communication that you're doing, the effectiveness of the medium that you're doing, and the cost of the medium. So for instance, if it's a fast moving consumer good, everyday good, it's a good idea to place your advertisement on television, right? Because it's a mass marketed product. Television is a mass medium. It reaches out to pretty much every type of audience, right? So it's a good idea to use television. But if it's a very expensive product that only a very few people can afford, then placing your advertisement on television wouldn't be a very good idea, since your product is not designed for everybody, right? So you need to change your medium accordingly. So probably for an advertiser, placing your advertisement in a more prestigious magazine would be a good idea if your product is extremely expensive, right? So you need to choose your product, you need to choose your medium according to the impact that you would want to create, the effectiveness and the cost of the medium. Then narrowcasting versus shotgun approaches. The narrowcasting focuses the message on selected market segments, whereas shotgun approach is an approach whereby you target each and every one, right? So television is a shotgun approach that offers broadcasting rather than narrowcasting. So all broadcasting approach mediums are actually your shotgun approach mediums, and narrowcasting mediums include the mediums that you can use into sending out message very selectively. Now narrowcasting is generally low in cost, right? So for instance, social media costs you far less money to advertise than television, right? And social media is generally a narrowcasting medium. It targets more effectively, right? So advertisements that are put on pages of every individual are specifically put there for a reason, and that is the liking of the person, right? Then engages customer better, since the advertisements are more targeted, then naturally they would attract the customer better. Then another interesting topic that is discussed in your book and that pertains to advertising is media multitaskers. Now these days, people when they're viewing, when they're sitting down, they're not just using one medium. They're actually using 2-3 mediums at the same time, which is creating huge opportunities for marketers, right? So for a person who is watching the television, he would be busy surfing the internet on their mobile phones as well, and they would have a laptop in their lap as well, and they would be maybe chatting with somebody on the laptop as well, or maybe surfing their Facebook page or Twitter or Instagram at the very same time as well. So they're using three different mediums in the same time, right? So one person is multitasking. He is being bombarded with advertisement on three fronts. That is television, mobile phone, and the laptop. So that creates great opportunity and at the very same time threat for the marketer. Now, selecting advertising media. Now, choosing specific medium, let's say by the last slide we've chosen the media that we want to send out the message from. Let's say we've chosen television or we've chosen magazine, right? Now, in the next step, you would choose which magazine. So you have the medium category, and within that medium, how would the message go? So, for instance, if you've chosen to send out the message by magazine, then you would have to answer which magazine, right? So you would have to see in which magazine would you place the advertisement in. So in that particular scenario, you need to choose specific medium within the general medium. So magazine was the general medium, and specific medium would be Economist, Aurora, Cosmopolitan. So these are all specific mediums within a general medium of magazine. So when you're choosing selective specific mediums, you need to see the cost of the medium and the audience quality. Now, well, let's just first talk about audience quality. So the audience quality of Akhbar-e-Jahan and Business Week or Newsweek, do you think they would be same? Of course they would not be, right? So somebody who reads Akhbar-e-Jahan or other digests like these, his taste and his interests would be completely different from somebody who reads Economist or Business Week or Newsweek or Times Magazine, right? So they would have completely different tastes, right? So you need to see audience quality and match it with your product, right? So if you're trying to advertise a Rolex watch in Akhbar-e-Jahan, obviously not relevant, because the average consumer who's reading Akhbar-e-Jahan, he cannot afford a Rolex, generally, right? So the people who read that genre of magazine would never be attracted to your product. But those who read Economist, who reads Business Week, they might be able to buy your product if it's a very high-end product. Once you've selected on the audience quality, then the next step is the cost that you can incur in advertising or sending out your message. For instance, how do you calculate the cost? You calculate the cost per 1,000 persons. So how much the advertisement would cost per 1,000 person. Now what you do is, here I've set a scenario for two situations whereby Newsweek costs $2,15,800 for placing the advertisement, and their readership is 2.6 million people. As a result of which, the cost per 1,000 for a particular ad is $83. Now coming down to Business Week, the average cost of putting up the advertisement is $10,800. So Business Week costs $1,08,000 to reach out to the an audience of 0.9 million. As a result of which, the cost to reach 1,000 people from a particular advertisement is $120. So if you see here, the total cost for Business Week and Newsweek are different, but their readership is also different. So it is expensive to place an advertisement in Newsweek, but since the readership is much more than that of the other magazine, as a result of which the per 1,000 person cost reduces down to $83, whereas for Business Week it is $120 because the readership is far less. So you need to calculate the cost per 1,000 people, and whatever costs you less and the audience quality is the same as you desire, then you would place the advertisement in that particular medium. Another important element, you've selected the medium, then the general medium, then within the general medium you have selected the specific medium, and now in that specific medium you would now decide the time at which you would advertise the or you would send out the message. So the next element is deciding on media timing. Now messages are usually sent out in seasonality, in seasons, right? For most of the companies. For majority of the companies, the messages are sent out as per seasons. So for instance, for appliances like refrigerators, for appliances like air conditioners, in Pakistan you generally tend to see their advertisements in summertime more, right? For let's say clothing companies, the advertisements tend to be higher when it comes to festive seasons, right? So for instance, for the clothing companies, the ads would be higher during the period of Christmas, during the period of Easter, during the period of Eid. So we have, Eid al-Adha coming up, as a result of which nowadays you're seeing a lot of companies advertising about their new collection that is in stores at the moment. So advertising is usually done in seasonality or in seasons. Pattern of advertising, you could schedule ads continuously or in continuity. And what do I mean by continuity? That means scheduling the advertisement within a given period of time. On the other hand, there could be pulsing. Pulsing is scheduling unevenly within a given period of time. So in continuity, the advertisements are sent out evenly. So let's say I need to place 7 advertisements during a week, and I would if I'm following continuity style of placing the advertisement, then what would I do? I would place one advertisement daily. So for Monday one advertisement, for Tuesday one advertisement, for Thursday another advertisement. That would be continuity. On the other hand, if I'm following the other strategy, that is pulsing, I have 7 advertisements to send out within a week, then probably I would send out most messages on Friday and Saturday, because it's weekend. People generally tend to spend more time shopping on weekends, and for the rest of the week I'll say 1 or 2. So that would be pulsing. I'm sending out message unevenly during a given period of time. So that is deciding on the pattern of advertising. Now they both have their own benefits and drawbacks, but it is generally advisable to send out the messages by pulsing, so as to send out most messages when they are most effective, right? So if you see a message on, let's say, Thursday and Friday, and you see an advertisement on television that there would be sale on a certain brand, you would respond more to it or in a better fashion than you would see the advertisement throughout the week, right? So but depends upon the product and your strategy. Right, let's do the evaluating advertising effectiveness and return on advertising investment. Now this is the last step when it comes to deciding on various advertising decisions, right? So this is the last step, evaluating advertising effectiveness and return on advertising investment. Now, return on investment when it comes to marketing and advertising, as we've discussed earlier in, I believe, chapter number 4, it's really very hard, right? So there are no proper metrics that have been developed so far that could exactly tell you if the marketing or the advertising that you did, what sort of result that it created, what return did the investment generate, how many sales were increased as a result of your new promotional campaign. So there are no specific metrics that are available that could gauge all that information. So for that, there are generally two broad ways through which you could not exactly tell, but somehow make an informed decision when it comes to advertising effectiveness. The first way is communication effect. What sort of effects did the communication create? You could do it in a laboratory setting, whereby you could ask the people about a certain brand prior to they seeing the advertisement, and once they've been exposed to the advertisement, then you could see their post response towards the advertisement, right? So let's say if I take, let's say, a group of 10 people, make them sit at a place and ask them regarding, let's say, a new cosmetic brand. Let's say Revlon is coming for the very first time in Pakistan, and I ask them what do they think about Revlon, what information do they already have, what offers, what products do they have, sort of these questions. And then I make them watch advertisements of Revlon. And once they've watched the advertisement, then I go and ask the very same questions from them and see how the response has changed. So that could tell how effective the communication was. So that is one way of telling the effectiveness of advertising. That is communication effects. That indicates whether the ad and media are communicating the ad message well and should be tested before or after the ad runs. The second way could be sales and profit effects. Now, sales and profit effects compare past sales and profits with past expenditure or through experiments. So that is another way that could tell you return on investment when it comes to advertising. So what you could do, one way to gauge ROI when it comes to advertising and sales and profit is that you could see how much sales and profit you were generating with a previous spending pattern on advertising, and how much sales and profit has increased or decreased with the change in your promotional budget expenditures. That could be one way. Another way could be that you could use different promotional campaigns in different areas or geographical boundaries that you're working in, and see their effect on the sales and promotion. That could also tell you your return on investment in terms of advertising. So broadly classifying, there are two ways in which you could tell if your advertising campaign was effective or not. The first way could be a communication effect, and the second way could be sales and profit effect. But one needs to keep in mind that these are not purely scientific ways of gauging ROI, and there are no metrics that have been developed so far that could exactly tell you the return on investment. Right. So there are many other considerations that you need to keep in mind when you're advertising, whether to have an in-house advertising agency whereby the company has its own advertising department and it works for them. You could have somebody from outside who could work for you and who could be on board with you, and you could pay them a retainer fee, and as a result of which they keep on working for you and advertise for you. Then you have international advertising decisions that are extremely important when you're advertising internationally. So what happens in international advertising decisions? A few companies, what they do is they create standardized campaigns throughout the world, and then with respect to each country they twist and tweak it a little to you sort of make it more relevant for a particular boundary. So for instance, Coke would have the same tagline, the same message content for India, Pakistan, America, China, but what they could do would be to sort of twist and tweak a little bit. So maybe hire locals from Pakistan for a local advertisement, use local language, use local festivals and all such things, and they could incorporate all this information into a particular ad and make it more relevant for the Pakistani market. On the other hand, they could use the same idea, the same color patterns, but they could employ Indian celebrities, Indian festivals like Holi and Diwali, and they could sort of add those in their advertisement and make it relevant for the Indian audience. So what international companies do is they create a standardized campaign and sort of adapt it to the needs of the geographical boundaries and to the culture of the geographical boundaries, and that's how they advertise. If they go with a very standardized campaign for all the countries that they're present in, it might backfire because of the cultural reasons, because of the social reasons, and because of regulatory reasons sometimes as well. So for instance, competitive advertising, if let's say Pepsi decides to create an advertisement that is competitive in nature, it is trying to compare it with a certain other soda brand, and it runs it in US and other nearby countries, they all have regulations that allow competitive advertising. But if they try to run the same advertisement here in this particular regions, we have regulatory requirements that prohibit the companies to do competitive advertising, as a result of which they cannot run the same advertisement here in this particular region, and they would have to come up with another campaign. So there are regulatory requirements, that there are cultural requirements, there are social requirements that ask companies to sort of tailor their advertising campaigns to the local market. We'll keep it here and we'll continue with how the advertising agency generally works in the next lecture.